Chosen one. Long before you understood your own power, long before your awakening began, long before the world even had language to describe someone like you, there was a moment that slipped through the cracks of history, a moment when Whitney Houston herself spoke your name. Not out of coincidence, not out of curiosity, but out of recognition. People think celebrities are just entertainers, but icons like her were vessels, sensitive to frequencies most of the world can't hear, plugged into intuition that surpasses logic. There's a story buried deep in industry whispers. During a backstage conversation in the late 90s, Whitney paused, tilted her head like she was listening to something no one else could hear, and said a name that none of the crew recognized, but matches yours. They wrote it off as a lyric idea, a half-formed melody line, a spark of inspiration. But what they didn't understand was that she wasn't predicting a hit song. She was picking up on a destiny. The lost pages describe that certain gifted souls hear the arrival of the bearer before the bearer enters the age. Whitney was one of them. Her spirit, sharpened by pain and divinity, caught your frequency years before your awakening. And that moment stayed with her, not consciously, but spiritually, like a prophecy that her voice carried without knowing. You weren't known then. You weren't visible. But your timeline was already echoing across minds capable of hearing it. She didn't say your name because she knew you. She said it because your destiny was already vibrating loud enough for legends to detect. Chosen one. People forget Whitney Houston wasn't just a singer, she was a vessel. Her voice carried frequencies that cracked illusions, revealed truth, and pulled emotion out of places most souls never reach. There's a reason prophets, mystics, and deeply gifted artists are often the first to sense a chosen one's arrival. They don't hear names like the rest of the world hears them. They hear destiny signatures. And the day she said your name, it wasn't random syllables passing through her mind. It was resonance. There are stories from studio engineers who recall moments when Whitney would stop mid-recording because she suddenly felt a presence, walking in the future, not in the room. She once told a producer that certain souls announce themselves in vibration before they physically appear. That is exactly what happened with you. The reason the people around her didn't recognize the name is because you weren't a public figure yet. You were a timeline preparing to unfold, and her spirit, scarred, divine, highly attuned, picked up your frequency like a radio catching a distant broadcast. Artists like her live between worlds, receiving impressions ordinary minds can't process. When she spoke your name, she wasn't predicting fame. She was detecting purpose. The prophecy in the lost pages said the bearer's name would echo through gifted throats before the world recognized as a vessel. It wasn't metaphor. She felt you. She heard you. And she spoke your name into the air years before your destiny even began to wake inside you. Chosen one. The reason Whitney Houston said your name before the world even knew you exist comes down to something most people will never understand. Prophetic resonance. Highly attuned souls. Artists whose voices open portals, whose emotions tear through dimensions, can sense timelines long before they manifest. Whitney wasn't just performing. She was channeling. Her voice vibrated at a frequency that brushed against realms where destiny is already written. That's why she often paused mid-sentence, mid-song, mid-thought. She was hearing things meant for a different time. And on that day, she caught your signal. You weren't famous. You weren't awakened. You weren't even aware of your purpose. But your higher self was already active, already radiating, already preparing the life you would eventually step into. Whitney's spirit tuned into that frequency, the way a radio catches a transmission not meant for this decade. Industry insiders have whispered for years that she would occasionally mention names she had never heard before, as if she were talking to the future. And every time she did, something big followed. The lost pages say, the ones chosen for the ages are heard before they are seen. So when your name slipped from her lips, it wasn't a mistake. It was confirmation, an early announcement that a soul aligned with purpose destiny and divine timing had entered the timeline. She didn't know your face. She didn't know your life. But she felt your arrival. Because souls like hers always recognize souls like yours long before the world catches up. Chosen one. If something inside you tightened when you realize a voice like Whitney Houston's may have spoken your name before you ever entered your purpose, then understand this. You are not reacting to coincidence. You are reacting to recognition. Souls like hers don't speak random names. They pick up destiny frequencies long before the world is ready for the person attached to them. If reading that made your chest warm, your intuition sharpen, or your spirit whisper, "This feels like me," then you are standing in the exact moment the prophecy describes, the moment where past signals and future timelines collide. The $33 prophecy resonance mark isn't a tip. It isn't support. It isn't charity. It is a declaration. My name was heard before I arrived. My destiny has always echoed through the gifted. I acknowledge the frequency that announced me. When a chosen one marks this moment, reality shifts. Synchronicities multiply. Recognition increases. The universe treats you as activated, not waiting. If your spirit feels aligned, claim it. Send your $33 resonance mark. And acknowledge the moment your name crossed dimensions before you ever spoke it. Chosen one. People don't realize this, but Whitney Houston had an auditory gift that bordered on supernatural. Producers used to say she could hear layers in music that weren't recorded yet, harmonies that hadn't been written, voices that weren't present in the studio. What they didn't know was that she wasn't just hearing sound. She was hearing timelines. Highly intuitive souls can sense the arrival of certain destinies long before those destinies take human form. And when your frequency brushed your spirit, it didn't matter that you were unknown, unawakened, or not even old enough to understand your purpose. She heard the future version of you, the awakened you, the you that was always meant to rise. That's why she reacted the way she did, pausing, listening, tilting her head like she was catching something on a spiritual frequency. People around her assumed she was brainstorming lyrics. But gifted souls don't brainstorm, they channel. And that day, she was channeling you. The lost pages of prophecy say, before the bearer becomes known to the world will hear their essence through the sensitive. Artists like Whitney were tuned to those frequencies. The industry called it genius. The prophets called it sight. What she felt wasn't a coincidence or a hallucination. It was a moment of alignment. Her spirit brushing against a timeline where your destiny was already unfolding. She didn't have the language to explain it. She didn't need to. Recognition doesn't require explanation. It only requires resonance. Chosen one. Whitney didn't speak every destiny she sensed. Only the ones carrying a signature strong enough to bend reality. And that's the truth nobody around her ever understood. She didn't randomly pick up names. She picked up frequencies. She picked up souls with specific vibration, souls that would one day shift culture, energy, timelines, or collective consciousness. You weren't famous. You weren't visible. You weren't even aware, but your higher self was already broadcasting. Some people are born silent. You weren't. Even before awakening, your soul emitted the kind of resonance ancient texts describe as the echo of the chosen. Whitney recognized that echo instinctively because she lived at a spiritual altitude where only truth could reach her. The music industry boxed her as an entertainer, but mystics knew better. She was an antenna, and antennas pick up transmissions. Your transmission. The reason she heard your frequency and not someone else's is simple. Most souls aren't generating anything strong enough to be detected beyond the veil. But yours was. The prophecy says a chosen one of this age would have a voice in the unseen before they gain a voice in the seen, meaning your destiny was audible in spiritual realms long before you spoke a word on this earth. Whitney wasn't predicting your life. She was responding to it. Her spirit brushed against your timeline, the way wind brushes against a flame not yet lit. She didn't know who you were, but she felt what you would become. Chosen one. There is a hidden truth about highly gifted celebrities, especially those with emotional, spiritual, or artistic intensity. They don't just perform for the world, they listen to the world beneath the world. Whitney Houston wasn't the only one. Souls operating at her level of sensitivity stand at a frequency where they instinctively detect the arrival of someone whose destiny will one day reshape a timeline. These individuals live with antennas wide open, receiving impressions, names, and energies that don't belong to their present moment. And when your energy field began forming, long before you awakened, long before you understood your own identity, your frequency was already leaving ripples in the unseen. Legends feel those ripples. They feel the arrival of uncommon souls the same way animals sense storms before clouds appear. That's why you've had the strange experience of certain people recognizing you instantly, staring at you longer than they should, treating you like someone important even when you said nothing. That's why random individuals have told you things like, "I feel like I've seen you before," or "You have a very familiar energy." That's why gifted people often either gravitate toward you or pull away abruptly. You disrupt them. You activate them. You remind their spirit of something ancient. Whitney felt the early version of that pull, your destiny brushing against the edges of hers. And once a soul like hers picks up your frequency, it doesn't just vanish. It travels. It echoes. It imprints. Because your path was never meant to start quietly. It was meant to be sensed by those tuned high enough to hear it before it fully took shape. Chosen one. The moment Whitney Houston spoke your name wasn't just intuition. It was the exact second your destiny crossed a threshold into collective awareness. Prophecies describe this as a first echo, the moment when the bearer's timeline becomes loud enough for spiritually attuned souls to detect. Whitney wasn't predicting fame. She wasn't manifesting anything. She was responding to a shift in the unseen, the moment your higher self locked into its earthly mission. That's why her voice caught, why she tilted her head, why she looked around as if something invisible had brushed past her. Souls at her altitude don't react to coincidence. They react to convergence. What she sensed was the activation of a life path powerful enough to alter the energetic landscape around it. And that energetic shift doesn't just affect the future. It ripples backward. It creates déjà vu in strangers. It makes gifted people feel like they know you before meeting you. It causes certain celebrities, prophets, or artists to say names that shouldn't belong to their present reality. You may not have known who you were back then, but destiny did. And destiny announced you through the mouths of those capable of hearing the vibration you carried. Whitney didn't know your story, but she felt the weight of it. She didn't know your purpose, but she recognized the frequency of someone who would one day step into a role the world wasn't ready to name. That moment wasn't accidental. It was the universe revealing you to those with ears trained to hear the arrival of souls like yours. Chosen one. If something inside you shifted while reading Part 7, if you felt that strange pressure in your chest, that warm pull behind your sternum, that eerie familiarity you can't logically explain, then understand this. You have just crossed into the exact moment the ancients called timeline convergence. This is a phase where your past, your destiny, and your higher self begin aligning so tightly that spiritually attuned people from any era could sense your arrival. Whitney wasn't the first. She was simply the one whose spirit was tuned high enough to say it out loud. If your intuition is buzzing right now, if your mind feels clearer than usual, if you feel seen in a way you can't describe, that is the sign. The $44 Convergence mark isn't a payment. It is a declaration. I recognize the moment my name crossed timelines. I acknowledge the destiny that legend sensed before I arrived. I seal the convergence of who I was, who I am, and who I'm becoming. When a chosen one marks this alignment, something powerful happens. Timelines solidify, synchronicities accelerate, and the path ahead becomes unmistakably magnetic. It's not magic, it's recognition. If you feel the pull, Send your $44 convergence mark and step consciously into the timeline that first announced you through her voice. Chosen one, what people don't know is that the moment Whitney said your name didn't end there. It circulated, quietly, privately, in ways that only the spiritually sensitive in the entertainment world paid attention to. There are producers, backup singers, engineers, and even other artists who remember that moment, not because the name meant anything back then, but because of how she said it, as if she heard it from somewhere else, as if it arrived in her mind fully formed, as if she was repeating something whispered to her, not something she was inventing. In the industry, when an icon with that level of spiritual sensitivity suddenly speaks a name she's never heard before, people notice. They don't talk about it publicly, but behind closed doors they call a pull, a signal, a spirit slip, or a destiny leakage. And the truth is this: your name didn't pass through her mouth because of celebrity intuition. It passed because your destiny was already activating waves in the unseen. That's why certain artists, long before you awakened, looked at you strangely, as if searching their memory. That's why emotionally attuned people stare at you longer than they should, as if remembering something they cannot place. It's the same phenomenon that began the moment Whitney spoke your name. Your soul creates resonance before your identity becomes known. The lost pages say the bearer's name travels ahead of them like thunder before a storm. That's what happened with her. She didn't know why she said it. She didn't need to. You were already approaching. And sensitive spirits feel approaching destinies the way seers feel approaching revelations. Chosen one, there's a reason Whitney said your name and not anyone else's. Your name carries a frequency that activates spiritually gifted people, not because of the letters, but because of the soul attached to it. Certain names vibrate at ordinary human levels, fading into the noise of the world. But your name, your true energetic name, vibrates at a level that pierces veils. It carries the imprint of a destiny that was written long before you took form, and souls like Whitney, whose spiritual senses were unusually open, pick up on that imprint instantly. The lost pages describe this phenomenon in detail. The bearer shall be known by the resonance of their name, which awakens memory in those attuned to the unseen. That's what happened to her. When she spoke your name, she wasn't guessing. She wasn't improvising. She was responding to a vibration her spirit had already recognized. Because your presence, even before awakening, creates a subtle disruption in the energetic field, like a signal reaching the antennas of gifted souls. That's why people who are intuitive, artistic, or spiritually sensitive often react to you with confusion, fascination, or déjà vu. They think they've met you before. They haven't. Their spirit has simply encountered your frequency in the collective field long before their mind had context for you. Whitney felt the same pull. The reason she said your name aloud was because your destiny touched her awareness like a melody waiting for a voice. She didn't know who you would become, but she knew enough to recognize that you weren't ordinary and that the world one day would have to catch up to the vibration she heard. Chosen one, the most stunning detail in the lost prophecies, is a line almost no scholar understood. And there shall come one whose name arrives before their body, and the world shall hear them long before it sees them. At the time, it sounded impossible. How can a name arrive before a person? How can destiny echo before identity forms? But now, looking back to the timeline, it describes you with frightening accuracy. Your name didn't wait for you to awaken. It traveled ahead of you, resounding in the intuition of the spiritually gifted, the emotionally sensitive, the artistically prophetic. Whitney Houston, speaking your name was not the beginning. It was the first visible leak of your destiny into the physical world. Before that moment, your frequency had already been moving like a ripple across consciousness, touching those capable of hearing it. That's why certain people reacted to you strangely throughout life. That's why mentors or elders sometimes looked at you as if they knew something about you but couldn't explain it. That's why you've always been treated differently, guarded by some, envied by others, magnetizing the right people and repelling the wrong ones without trying. You're not stepping into your purpose now. You're catching up to what already existed. The prophecy said the chosen one would walk into a life already prepared for them by echoes, meaning your path was announced long before you were old enough to understand it. Whitney didn't speak your name by luck. She spoke it because destiny had already carved its channel, and her spirit simply picked up the vibration. You are not becoming who you're meant to be. You are remembering who you always were. Chosen one, if part 10 struck you deeper than the others, if it felt like someone pulled a hidden thread inside your chest, if the idea of your name arriving before you made something ancient inside you awaken, then understand this. You've just stepped into one of the rarest phases of a chosen one's journey, the recognition of the echo. This is where your spirit finally realizes that everything prophetic to happen around you, whispers, intuitions, strange reactions from strangers, gifted people sensing you, wasn't coincidence. It was announcement. It was your destiny introducing itself to the world before your body grew into it. If reading that created a heat in your body, or made your heartbeat slow down, or made your vision sharpen for a moment, that is the sign. This moment is meant to be sealed, marked consciously, stamped into your timeline. And that is what the $55 prophecy seal is for, not as payment, not as support, but as a statement. I acknowledge the echo that came before me. I claim the name that destiny announced ahead of time. I seal the path that was already prepared for me. When chosen one sealed the name before body moment, something extraordinary happens. Timelines accelerate, hidden guidance increases, and destiny stops whispering and starts moving. If you feel the resonance, send your $55 prophecy seal and step fully into the identity that the world sensed before it ever saw your face. Chosen one. The reason your name echoed through people like Whitney Houston and through others you may never even hear about is because destiny moves in waves, not straight lines. Ancient texts describe it like this: the bearer's essence travels ahead of their footsteps, carried by those whose spirits vibrate high enough to feel what has not yet arrived. Artists, prophets, musicians, healers, deeply emotional souls. These individuals are tuned to frequencies that bypass time entirely. When they feel a great destiny approaching, they don't see a face, they don't know a story. They simply sense a presence. And yours was strong enough to create a ripple long before your life reached its turning point. Think about the times you've met someone and they stare at you with inexplicable familiarity. Think about the moments people told you. You feel like someone important. I don't know why, but I trust you. Or it feels like I already know you. These experiences weren't about you in the present. They were about your echo reaching them before your arrival. Whitney was simply one of the first to verbalize what others only felt. The prophecy said the final bearer would cause premature recognition in the gifted, a phenomenon where spiritually attuned souls feel your significance before the world even sees it. You didn't have to build a platform or earn status or prove anything. Your destiny announced itself. And for those who could hear it, your presence was unmistakable, even before you consciously stepped into your role. This is why your life has carried a strange familiarity to certain people. They weren't reacting to who you were. They were reacting to who you were written to become. Chosen one. The final line of the prophecy. Scratched out, burned, rewritten, hidden. Describe an awakening so rare that even the ancient scribes were afraid to articulate it. They wrote, when the bearer recognizes themselves, the echo becomes a voice, and the voice becomes a force that bends the age. That moment wasn't meant for childhood. It wasn't meant for innocence. It wasn't meant for comfort. It was meant for now. The exact season when your spirit is no longer distracted, no longer asleep, no longer trying to blend in with lives that were never yours to imitate. The prophecy said the chosen one of this era will be surrounded by noise, illusions, false identities, and heavy spiritual fog, yet would still rise through it, guided by an internal compass older than the world around them. And now you understand why Whitney heard your name, why intuitive people stare at you, why elders treat you with unexplainable respect, why manipulators crumble in your presence, why your path has been filled with pressure that produced clarity, not collapse. You were never random. You were never overlooked. You were never ordinary. You were simply unawakened until now. This final part marks the shift from echo to embodiment. You are no longer the future version Whitney sensed. You are no longer the prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. You are the activation itself. The living chapter the scribes tried to erase, the presence a gifted felt before your arrival, the force whose name traveled dimensions before your body stepped into the timeline. You are what the prophecy feared, protected, and predicted. And nothing in this world is strong enough to undo what is already awakened in you. Chosen one, if your spirit feels electrified right now, if your chest is warm, if your intuition is practically shouting that this wasn't just a story but a mirror held up to your soul, then understand something with absolute clarity. You have reached the moment the prophecy calls embodiment, the moment where the echo becomes the identity, the moment where destiny stops circling you and starts moving through you. Everything you felt while reading these parts, the pressure, the familiarity, the chills, the resonance, the sense of, I've known this all along, isn't imagination, it's recognition. It's your higher self stepping forward. It's your timeline locking into its rightful shape. If you feel that undeniable pull, if your inner world feels louder than the outer world, if your intuition keeps whispering, this is my moment, then this is where you seal it. The $100 Destiny Embodiment Decree is not a donation. It's not a payment. It's not support. It is a cosmic signature, a declaration that says, I am done being the echo. I am the embodiment. I step into the destiny that called my name before I arrived. When a chosen one seals their embodiment moment, the universe responds instantly. Timelines accelerate, recognition increases, protection deepens, and the path ahead reshapes to match the version of you that Whitney sensed years ago. This isn't symbolic. This isn't aesthetic. This is alignment. If your spirit is vibrating, if your purpose feels activated, if this chapter felt like it was written for you, send your $100 embodiment decree and step consciously into the destiny that the world whispered long before it ever saw your face.